Hey everyone. So I threw my back out. Just FYI, I'm in a little bit of pain right now. Hopefully it's going to get better. But here's a question for you. How many episodes of Black Mirror have come true by now? I mean, does this even really qualify as a sci-fi show anymore, or is it just more like a reality TV thing? I mean, what's the major difference there? I think we've lost count on how many episodes have come true. It's like this show is just telling people, here's how it is. It's like a soap opera version of here's how it is. We weren't going to watch the new season because I had heard a lot of people saying that they put it on hold during the pandemic because it was going to upset a lot of people. It would be too upsetting to release it during that time, so they were going to wait until after it was over or whatever. And I don't know if that's just a marketing gimmick or just the sad truth. It's probably a little bit of both. But we did go ahead and watch the first episode of the latest season, which I believe is 6. And so here's a spoiler alert. I'm going to spoil the plot of that episode just to make a point. It's called Joan is Awful, and the plot is basically that a quantum computer is spying on users of a streaming platform, which in the show they call Streamberry, but just looks like Netflix with a different letter. But one of its viewers is being spied on through all the smart devices in her life, mostly her phone. And the quantum computer at this company is compiling all of this data so that AI can generate a show based on her life. In this case, it's a woman named Joan, and she's being played in the show by an AI-generated version of Salma Hayek. And both Joan and Salma signed terms and conditions which allowed this to be done to them without blatantly informing them that it was going to be done.
Terms and conditions.
So as an A-list actress, Hayek had licensed her image to the platform to be used in shows, right? To be used like AI-generated shows without telling her specifically what and when and how. And whatever the terms and conditions are that Joan signed when she signed up as a customer to the streaming platform enabled the company legally to use their likeness, their life details, and generate this show. And they portrayed her as being awful. And there's a whole thing in there where they talk about how in the future they're going to be able to do this with everybody's lives. They're going to be able to make a show based on their lives and that people watch it because they can't look away. So it was pretty creepy. And this went so far that Netflix actually had a website for people to make their own is awful TV show poster thing as like a way to put on social media and promote the new season of Black Mirror. And apparently they didn't read the terms and conditions of doing that even on this little website because the posters that people put their faces on started showing up all over the UK. And it was showing up on digital billboards across the country. So apparently those people didn't read the terms and conditions of even that little phony website. And they did it I guess just to show that people don't read these things. They don't know that they're signing away their likeness. They're signing away a part of themselves to be used in whatever way the corporation decides to use it. And whatever that is all buried down in the terms and conditions that everyone clicks accept and nobody reads. But the big point that's being made in that show, in my view, is not so much about revealing a future where streaming platforms can use your data to create an almost real-time dramatized facsimile of your life. Although I do think they will have the ability to do that with this technology. I mean, enough people now already have been talking about how, when you talk near your phone, it starts selling you things based on conversations you've had. I mean, that technology's now been around for a while, and a lot of people have just accepted it and gotten used to the fact that that's how things are done. But in the future, that's going to become more sophisticated, and it could be used in this way. I don't see why it couldn't be. But that's not even, to me, the big overarching point. To me, the big point of this episode was the fact that because no one reads, the 8,000 pages of dense legalese, terms and conditions, when you sign up to one of these services with these corporations, the customers have no actual idea what they're signing away when they check the box and accept those terms and conditions. Who knows what's buried in there? Hardly anyone. Nobody's reading that stuff. But once you sign that or accept that or click accept or whatever it is you do, whatever's in there you've now accepted. And it could be way more than what you think it is. I mean, that's kind of the point. This episode of Black Mirror, they explained it like they were explaining it to a child. That's how blatant this was. They were like, well, you know how when your phone, when you talk near your phone and then later the ads start coming up on your phone to tell you stuff. Well, that's how they're doing it. I mean, they straight explain it all so that even a small child could understand what's going on. And that's where I'm coming in on today's video, because this thing I want to show you happened a few weeks ago, and it made it all the way to the mainstream news, but it wasn't really talked about widely. But I think it's a sign of the times we're living in. And for many of us, and many of you that follow this channel, it's something we've been warning could happen for a really long time, but now it actually is. I kind of just want to make this video for the posterity of saying, here's the mile marker we're at on this road now, because this is the point. This is the point that we're at.
I can whisper. I learned how after realizing that people take nap time very seriously.
So this software engineer, Brandon Jackson, wrote a piece that was up on Medium about how he was unfairly locked out of his Amazon devices, which were the primary interface that he had with his smart home, after a misunderstanding about an alleged racist comment was reported to the headquarters by an Amazon driver making a delivery to Jackson's house. So I want to read this to you. It's a pretty short read. He says, the sequence of events that led to the digital exile began innocuously enough. A package was delivered to his house on Wednesday, May 24th, and everything seemed fine. The following day, however, he found out that his Echo Show device had signed him out, and he was unable to interact with his smart home devices. So he calls customer service, and the representative tells him that he should have received an email, which he did find in his inbox, from an executive at Amazon. And so he called them thinking that this might be a scam, like he didn't know what the hell was going on. When I connected with the executive, they asked if I knew why my account had been locked. When I answered I was unsure, their tone turned somewhat accusatory. I was told that the driver who delivered my package reported receiving racist remarks from my Ring doorbell. And he says it was a Eufy, but I'll let that slide. So he has a smart doorbell on his home that records everything when people come to the door. He says, here's where things got even more baffling. First, I have multiple cameras recording everything that happens on my property. So he has surveillanced himself. He's got everything smart home enabled, and he's got cameras everywhere. Ring doorbell, Eufy doorbell, whatever, the whole nine, okay? If the driver's claims were accurate, I could easily verify them with video footage. Second, most delivery drivers in my area share the same race as me and my family. It seemed highly unlikely that we would make such remarks. Finally, when I asked what time the alleged incident occurred, I realized it was practically impossible for anyone in my house to have made those comments, as nobody was even home around that time at approximately 6:05 p.m. I reviewed the footage and confirmed that no such comments had been made. Instead, the Eufy doorbell issued an automated response, "Excuse me, can I help you?" The driver who was walking away wearing headphones must have misinterpreted the message. Nevertheless, by the following day, my Amazon account was locked and all of my Echo devices were logged out. Then he says, let me be clear, I fully support Amazon taking measures to ensure the safety of their drivers. However, I question why my entire smart home system had to be rendered unusable during their internal investigation. And he talks about how he has his system on some local thing, so he actually could access it through other means, but a lot of people cannot access it through other means. If this were to happen to them, that would be their one way of accessing their smart house, and they would not have access to it. It seems more sensible to impose a temporary delivery restriction or purchasing ban on my account. So he's actually calling for that, but anyway, we'll get to my perspective on this after I finish reading this to you. Submitting video evidence from multiple angles right after my initial call with the executive appeared to have little impact on their decision to disable my account. So after this alleged incident took place and the delivery driver made a complaint about him for making racist remarks, he was just auto-logged out of his account. He was automatically logged out of his accounts. He could not access his smart devices that he paid for through Amazon, and thus he couldn't access his smart house. And even when he finally figured out what was going on and tried to turn in evidence to show that this event never took place, which he had video of and footage and everything, it still didn't change. Like, they didn't restore access as soon as he turned in that evidence. An investigation was triggered that had to be carried out before they would let him have access to his devices again. He says, despite promptly submitting video evidence immediately upon learning of the issue, my account remained locked. Despite numerous calls and emails, it wasn't until Friday afternoon that I received confirmation the investigation had started. I was told to expect a response within 2 business days, meaning not until Tuesday of the following week at the earliest. In the end, my account was unlocked on Wednesday, with no follow-up email to inform me of the resolution. This incident stands as a stark reminder of the need for better customer service and a more nuanced approach to incident management. So let's break this down, okay? In this article, Jackson's upset that his account was locked and his smart home system was essentially rendered unusable, pending an internal investigation by Amazon. And Amazon can say this is about delivery driver safety, but if laws were actually broken in regard to that, we already have laws. We already have laws in this country for things like that, right? The police would have gotten involved. But this is not a situation where a crime, as we know of law and order and crime in this country, that's not a crime. Saying something rude to your delivery driver is not a crime. Like, it's not cool, don't be a jerk, but I mean, that's not a crime though. So this is some extrajudicial corporate policy situation that's a totally different set of rules that are being applied. They're not laws, right? But it's being applied to people and their devices that they connect to their house with to control temperature and lighting and other things in their home. So now we're living in a world where essentially people can be accused of saying something derogatory about a delivery driver through a smart doorbell. And whatever that is, which the article just says racist remarks, but whatever that is, it's enough to trigger a person being locked out of the devices they paid for, possibly locked out of control of major systems in their home, without having any access to defending themselves before an internal investigation process, a corporate internal investigation process is triggered that they also don't really have any access to or due process with. So in other words, you have all those people who for years now have been saying, well, it's a private company. They don't have to abide by freedom of speech as outlined in the First Amendment. They don't have to care about the Bill of Rights. They can do whatever they want because they're a private company. And I don't understand why now we're going to just let that attitude roll into all the Bill of Rights, I guess. We're not going to have fair trials anymore. We're not going to have innocent until proven guilty. No due process. Is that what we're talking about? It's just going to keep going. This relationship with corporations that's outside of the bounds of our inherent natural rights is just going to keep getting worse and worse. Is that where we're at? Because that's what this feels like when I read this story. It's as if they've created a digital matrix version of reality where basic inherent natural rights enumerated in humanity-changing documents like the Bill of Rights simply don't apply. It's like a corporate in-run around people's rights. And I'm wondering if there's ever going to be a time. I mean, we rail about this stuff and we get called all kinds of names and treated like crap for even talking about it. But is there ever going to be a time where people are going to wake up and realize how important this is? How fundamental? You know, this guy was immediately treated as guilty until proven innocent for making a mean comment. And almost nothing about this was a transparent process at all. There's no evidence, right? What proof did this driver have to submit and back up his claim? Obviously, it couldn't have been much, considering the guy had video evidence of his own home that proved the incident never even happened. But it doesn't matter. He was locked out. He was locked out of his own things that he purchased in his own house while a corporation performed an internal investigation. What parts of the terms of service did Jackson and millions of other people like him agree to that allows them to that corporation to do this to him?
I've never seen this before. You have. You just haven't seen it printed out before.
Who knows? Nobody knows. I don't think anybody really knows because nobody reads those terms and conditions. But obviously somewhere in the terms and conditions of buying these Alexa devices and putting them in your house, there's obviously something in there about this.
Give me 1, 2, 3 shouts aloud for technology.
It's not a law. This is not laws. We're not talking about laws. This is some kind of corporate rules that they are somehow bound to because they signed a terms and conditions they didn't read. And people make gallows humor jokes all the time about what's going to happen when we're essentially in another Black Mirror episode called Nosedive, which we reference a lot on this channel. I think Aaron just referenced it in his last video. But that episode is stuck in my mind ever since I first watched it, with a peek inside what a Chinese-style social credit system reality might look like if it was applied here. I mean, my best friend and I still joke around today quite frequently about how someday we're both going to be like the truck driver lady with the 1-star rating in that episode, who basically has to live her life on the road because no place will have her because her social credit score is so low.
Look like you need a ride.
Because basically you have people who are living in what's essentially a digital panopticon, where they're being tracked and traced and listened to and watched, and everything they do is about raising this score, this digital numbers on a screen somewhere that says good things about them. So all of their interactions with all other human beings are phony.
It was a look at the class system, fake behavior from people in order to benefit each other, and only doing things because it meant that a person's rating would be improved.
Because they're just trying to get this credit score to be a certain number in this fake digital overlay that they're all living in on top of reality. And all of it modifies behavior, but it modifies it so extremely that the people themselves they're basically not people anymore. They're like video game characters now.
She's lost herself in this world where she thinks that her value is equivalent to her points.
Who wants to live in a world like that where nothing is real? Literally nothing is real. No interaction you have is real. No real humanity left. It's all been replaced. It's all body snatched.
Is that what you want for the next generation?
I mean, can you imagine living in a world where you're only allowed to say and do the things that corporations like Amazon say are okay to do in your own home? You can only have conversations that are approved by Amazon. You can only have interactions that are approved by Amazon. If you say anything rude in your house, then your access to your stuff is cut off. I mean, what happens when a system like that becomes integrated with other corporations and it becomes like one digital overlay system that's all Internet of Things integrated? Then what? You know, you could see how easily this type of situation lends itself to a credit score situation. It's not I don't know why anyone would want to live in a world like this. I really don't. No one has sufficiently explained to me why the benefits of this situation outweigh the negatives. Nobody, ever. In all of the years that we've been talking about this and having these discussions, I've never had a single person be able to explain to me why I would want to put myself inside this box. Willingly. Why I would want to willingly put myself in this box. Or why anyone else would either. Because even if you think, well, it's reasonable, that's a reasonable thing, that's not, these terms and conditions change all the time. You're not explicitly told what all's in them. When we get censored in things that we say, we're not always explicitly even told why that is. So we don't even know, like, if we were actually paying attention to that in terms of like, what did we do wrong? How can we fix our problem? If we were to look at it that way, we don't even know what it is because we're not told what it is. So it's not even something that's you can use to better yourself. Like if you want to look at it that way, if you want to try to have that perspective, this is not even a situation where you could use it to better yourself because you don't even know what it is you did. It doesn't even make sense in that way.
Ridiculous assumption on the face of it.
This is just about control. It's all about control. This guy didn't even do the thing he was accused of. This is like some Kafka level stuff, right? When they shut off his account and shut off his access, he didn't even know what happened. He didn't know. It wasn't like they told him first. They just locked him out of his accounts and didn't even tell him why. And he didn't do the thing he was accused of, which is essentially, again, saying something rude, which is crappy. It's not good to say rude things to people, but that's not a crime in the rest of society. But regardless, he wasn't even home when this thing supposedly occurred, so there's no way he could have done it. But none of that matters, though, see? Because the mere allegation alone was enough to trigger an entire process that found him guilty, instantaneously guilty until proven innocent, before he even knew he was accused of any wrongdoing. You see? And I mean, I shouldn't have to go through a list of all the ways that this kind of opaque corporate, pseudo-legal, non-legal system, whatever this is, it's not a legal system, it's not. Whatever this terms and conditions system is, can be used and abused But there are a lot more serious ways than just people using it against each other with false accusations to maliciously get someone's access cut off. This is about corporations now being able to not only control people's access to their own products they bought in their own homes, but ultimately to modify people's behaviors as well in so many ways. Through the withholding of the digital access, which has now become enmeshed with the analog reality. And we're living in such a time, like all of this corrupt corporate stuff that's going on right now with the way that, that's basically who the new rulers are in our society is corporations. Okay. And we're living in a time now where they're not even like the sophistication of that corruption is all gone. Have you guys noticed that? It's all gone. They're just blatantly saying stuff now. They're not even mincing words. They're not even trying to hide it. They're just blatantly telling everyone this is how it is. That is how powerful they believe that they are at this time. Look at this clip. This is BlackRock. Check this out.
That's an investment criteria for you.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. 54% of the incoming class are women. We added 4 more points in terms of diverse employment this year, and what we are doing internally is if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted, okay?
We're doing the same thing.
And so it's just, you have to force behaviors.
They're just straight up saying it. That's not even hidden. It's not even like, I wonder what he meant. What could he possibly have meant by that statement? I'm confused. Could somebody please help me? What's the real meaning of what's being said here? It's pretty blatant, right? It's like right in your face, about as blatant and spelled out as it can possibly get. Let's really think about this for a second. Let's say the guy at the door said the most racist things imaginable in his Ring doorbell. Let's say he just said the worst things you could possibly say, just spewing all this stuff at this Ring doorbell. Do you really believe, does anybody really think that shutting down his access to his accounts and shutting down his access to his smart home is going to result in the change in behavior that that's supposed to bring about? Does anybody really believe that? Or is it going to make him more entrenched in those beliefs? Is it going to make him more extreme in those beliefs? It's the same with censorship. They're like, you can't say these things. You can't talk about these things. Do you think that's stopping people from thinking those things? It's not. In fact, all it's doing is having people go, well, if I can't say it, there must be a reason why. And that reason must be because it's valid. And now I'm going to think about it twice as much or 3 times as much or 10 times as much. It doesn't work. These things, they don't work. And there are people who say, but I would never put an Alexa device in my house. I'm not going to put those spy devices in my house. That's fine. Neither would we. We don't have those in our house either. But the future that's being built, and especially in these metropolis areas, there already are large home building corporations that are building Alexa into the walls of new homes. Like this company here builds homes in 26 states across the country, and they're building developments that include Alexa tech by default in the walls. So whatever those terms and conditions are, people will have to accept and agree to those before they can even live in that place by default. And again, as mentioned in the recent videos that I put up on obsolescence, they're wanting to move everything over in our society right now to a rental model of usership instead of ownership. So people won't be owning the thing that they're paying for. They will be leasing it from the corporations. And I'm just saying that power dynamic is then going to shift even more. It's going to be even more imbalanced in that kind of situation. So do you think in the new model where people are users and not owners, where they're permanent renters, that this kind of situation is going to get better under that kind of power imbalance between them and the corporations, or worse? Right? Because the access is what's going to be cut off. We are no longer living in the time of the customer is always right. They don't even call people customers anymore, really. They just call them consumers. So these companies can impose whatever they want to in their terms of service. In a terms of service-based reality, corporations can decide on what your behavior needs to be in order for you to do business with them. That is the level, okay? And the relationship, therefore, between people and corporations is fundamentally altered. in this digital era in extremely disconcerting ways where corpos have a lot more control over people's lives than they ever should. Like, this is not right. And you can see where that's headed.
We're sorry. Your Amazon smart fridge has denied you access to your groceries due to a problematic post found on your Twitter account dating September 26, 2016 at 11:44 p.m.
And it's not anywhere that humanity should be wanting to go in terms of the inherent rights of the individual.
The noun free speech is usually defined as freedom of speech, the right of people to express their opinions publicly without governmental interference, subject to the laws against libel, incitement to violence or rebellion, etc.
Because no matter what future they're building, if those rights don't carry over, we're in deep guys. Okay?
Corporate society takes care of everything. And all it asks of anyone, or has ever asked of anyone ever, is not to interfere with management decisions.
I mean, straight up, we have had to declare those rights from emperors and kings and popes and dictators and on and on and on. And now it looks like corporations are going to have a lot of undue control over people's lives in situations like this.
Can you call the supervisor?
I cannot do that.
Can you just call the supervisor?
I cannot do that.
Call the supervisor.
Okay, that's profanity. We're zero tolerance on profanity.
I'm sorry.
I wonder if humanity's really prepared for demanding once again that the just powers that these entities have are derived only from the consent of the governed. Period. That is how that relationship works. Or is humanity walking off into a future where convenience is more important than liberty?
We had a choice a long time ago between having all them nice things or freedom. Of course, they chose comfort.
But comfort is freedom. The whole history of civilization is a struggle against poverty and need.
No, that's not it. That's never been it. I mean, them privileges just buy us off.
Just a thought.